Tom Clancy was a freak on them blank sheets. A psycho war gamer, he just loved imagining scenarios in which thousands of innocent people would die in unprovoked acts of violence. It was a legit 80s pastime, and he turned it into one of the most influential literary careers of our time. Despite his trademark technical detail, operational authenticity, and understanding of the banal evil that greenlights military atrocity, he usually always found a way to balance the realism with a preposterous setup like, who might want to nuke a football stadium? What if someone just flew a plane into Congress? What if the Pope insulted Soviet Russia and they were like, you wall, so they conspired to assassinate him? That one actually kind of happened, by the way. All that is to say is Las Vegas is a pretty badass place to do a terrorism. To what end, I don't really know, but as a setting for a tactical shooter, the latest entry in the storied Rainbow Six franchise, I'm sure Ubisoft jumped on the pitch as soon as someone correlated neon dollar signs with the ones sparking out of GameStop cash registers on release day. And maybe as a way to hedge their bets, Rainbow Six Vegas represented a serious shift in direction for what was a pretty hardcore tactical shooter series where the player's extensive planning around each individual mission replaced a traditional cutscene focused narrative. It was immersive given your level of control. You got your briefing, you chose your squads and could assign their entire mission paths with go codes. You could kit them out, basically playing God with your G.I. Joes, as it were. It was a very PC kind of game back when the differences between the platforms were so dramatic that it meant you'd be playing entirely different styles of games depending on what you owned. There were ports of the original Rainbow Six to consoles, but you can imagine how streamlined and held together with duct tape they had to be in order to even work. Fast forward to 2005, and the newest title in the series, Lockdown, does away with the planning altogether in favor of, well, I'm not really sure because the mission design has also been pared down. The levels are essentially linear with no options as far as entry points, which means there's no planning phase. You can't say it's for a greater emphasis on storytelling because you still get the pre-mission briefing and the ability to choose your squad's loadouts. It's like they filtered Rainbow Six through the original Ghost Recon, but kept close quarters levels and made the AI unable to hit anything on normal difficulty. The whole experience is too dry to take so much emphasis away from what the series was previously known for. It seemed like Ubisoft wanted to bring the entire series in earnest to the console space with no simultaneous and different developments of the same title and no dumbed down ports. Lockdown is still fitfully enjoyable. The essence of the Rainbow Six gameplay is still there and it runs really well on modern hardware, but it's never going to eclipse what came immediately before it in Rainbow Six 3. I think you can call it a solid first try at nailing down a design philosophy for the future of the series, for better or for worse. After all, the next generation of console hardware is right around the corner. And if you were hoping the increased power of the Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3 would mean that the series would go back to its core original experience of careful planning and execution, then you were most likely disappointed with the arrival of Rainbow Six Vegas. But what you might not want to fully accept is that a radical change in direction can still be a lot of fun.
Logan, we secure the rooftop. Oh, hell! What the hell? Tango, close to the dam.
This is a true next-gen makeover. You can call it not Rainbow Six if you like, and you'd be forgiven for doing so. I mean, right off the bat, so much is clearly altered. I liked the extremely grounded setup of the Red Storm Entertainment era, but it also doesn't hurt to try to take a concept like Rainbow into action thriller territory. And remember that this was a year before Call of Duty 4, so it's not like every other shooter chasing highly scripted mayhem. The 7th generation of single-player shooters took it upon themselves to really push their narratives and presentation, and I think going from Lockdown to this demonstrates the desire to shake things up and maybe get it right this time. We're straying from the core of the series, but the potential that is promised in a title like Rainbow Six Vegas means that the other art and storytelling elements that make up a game needed to deliver. This wasn't going to hit as hard if every mission were a glorified terrorist hunt with a few meaningless extra objectives. The levels are larger, more detailed, much longer, and the reservations you may have over this new identity could be assuaged the first time you leveled your weapon and fired at an enemy. Fully automatic fire is encouraged over precision single shot of years past. The muzzle flash in iron sights practically blinds you. Your enemies fight back tenaciously. They call you out. They taunt you. They move around. They take cover, attempt to flush you out. They die under great red clouds of blood that may splatter the walls. The visceral moment-to-moment combat has been dialed up and it feels great. Rainbow Six Vegas is a new beast. There are also cover mechanics now. Again, a development that seems like it flies in the face of what's come before it, but only on paper. Regenerating health notwithstanding, you are still highly vulnerable, and getting caught out in enemy fire means you're going down if you catch someone's quick burst, especially at the highest difficulty, which I did not play on here. I've already put myself through that once. The Vegas titles are tough. There are so many encounters in which you'll have to grab cover and hold on for dear life as you are bombarded with an onslaught of enemies, bullets flying in every direction, in the middle of some creative locales. It's not just the Mongols and Hells Angels who get to have all the fun.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
Each level is a story act, divided into scenes, which is interesting terminology the film nerd in me loves. And while I keep saying that storytelling has taken a step up, it's that Half-Life style in which everything unfolds in front of the player character.
Who's got my back?
It plays into this visceral new style. You get some table setting information about what you're flying into, then you rappel to the ground in practically the same breath for a stealthy infiltration, or it's headlong into the already unfolding carnage. Now, is the story actually something to write home about versus the stories of prior games? I don't really think so. The major difference is in how the levels themselves play out, and what seems like it's designed to feel like a more organic, fluid unfolding of events, much like a real-life terrorist attack. It's not one location with randomized enemy placement and that's it. Levels are much larger and feature multiple interior and exterior environments. After the Mexico prologue, you're fast roping into a street fight outside the Calypso Casino. It's a nice teaser of what's to come, to first stand underneath these mega structures before you actually step onto the casino floor and are treated to a grid-like combat maze full of neon lights and attract modes. Of course, the terrorists want a piece of that gambling pie, so you track them to a state-of-the-art safe room and deal with hostage situations, as those are in no short supply when you hit a tourist town. Then you find your way onto Fremont Street and you're like, wow, pretty lights. It's the game's signature moment for sure, if only because the environmental artists, level and gameplay designers' work, it all culminates in a chaotic and memorable stretch of what this game is supposed to be about. And this is fairly early on too. Once you've gotten your casino fix for the moment, it's off to a massive luxury spire that needs squashing from the top down and offers nighttime city views for your killing pleasure, then to yet another impossibly decadent, hell-themed casino called Dante's that is still under construction. What makes this campaign fun is that in the absence of being able to fight things out in real-world casinos, the developers found ways to repackage what is essentially the same type of level in subtly different ways. You're experiencing the different environmental permutations of a slot machine, or the vast iconography of this city of sin and all the glitz, glamour, and fiery money pits that come with it. It leads to this revelation that Las Vegas was just a diversion? Well, I never. And then you're whisked away to the Hoover Dam for a more classical kind of finale. You may be disappointed that the climax isn't drenched in neon light and strippers, but that's okay because fighting in and around this location is fun and yet another highlight of the game's level design. The story is whatever. It ends rather painfully on a cliffhanger, actually, but it's all presented successfully so as to actuate this game's entire premise, which I've said like 2 or 3 times already. Die-hard classic Rainbow Six fans, plug your ears. I think that Rainbow Six Vegas is a fantastic successor and is a highlight of the symbiotic console/PC game design. And what's great about playing it today is that cliffhanger will last you all of 10 minutes as you download and launch its sequel. But first, you have to spend more time than you'll admit trying to plaster a picture of your face onto this game's protagonist and discover that customization this time around is the name of the game. Bishop is not a silent protagonist, he's actually a very vocal and experienced part of this game's story, but similar to the previous game, allowing you to change up your loadout to fit your preferences, the player choice now extends to various pieces of armor that are not only cosmetic but offer a trade-off between player protection and movement speed. You can don yourself in the heaviest garb in order to take more shots, not that you can take much at all, but you're going to be moving slow enough to make yourself an increased target. I liked to keep it 50-50 as I never really felt like it had too great of an impact on the gameplay. Slow movement speed is a great annoyance in many a video game, so I chose to let God decide if my tactical mistakes would grant me a second chance. These choices will evolve as you play the game because there is an added experience system that rewards you not just through terrorist kills, but the type of kill. You can accumulate special points in 3 separate categories depending on the type of pacification. Headshots, long range, generally skilled kills fall into the marksman category. Close quarters kills are exactly that, and more aggro dispatches such as explosives or penetrating cover or killing turret gunners qualify in the assault category. These points are separate from the regular experience, and both systems go towards unlocking either more armor pieces and camouflage or new weapons for you to further configure your playstyle. Oh, and the kills your squad mates make count for experience too, so that's an added incentive to keep them relevant. Let's talk about these game squad mechanics because there is no Rainbow Six without taking command, and while you'll find no-go codes or mission planning here, that doesn't mean that you don't have a set of effective tools for navigating the several combat encounters, many of which are tied into the aforementioned environment and level design. You're encouraged to stop and think about the way you might want to clear the path forward, as it's not just balls to the wall all the time. You're going to get into a skirmish and then there's going to be some quiet time as you make your way into the next area. These commands have been basically imported from Lockdown but iterated and expanded upon to be central to the core gameplay. You can definitely take point all the way through and dare your squad mates to keep up, but there's always an advantage to making use of them, particularly ordering them around blind corners or into bottlenecks to try to soften things up. You can cheese the game in this way, but only to a degree, because as effective as they are, they will take fire and go down, and it'll be up to you to save their lives or it's game over. People who like to play these games as tactically as possible, snake camming every closed door, tagging targets, breaching and clearing, or changing your rules of engagement to reconnaissance based, or fixing silencers and attempting to stealth your way through these levels, it's all there because that's the canon way to play. You can also go loud at basically every moment, and that's cool too. I think you're going to want to, because firefights in these games are a lot of fun, whether you're in first person or hug and cover, and the game rewards both kinds of player, which I think is a total positive. Vegas 2's story is a tad more interesting by association because the revelations from the end of the first game get filled out with some added context. The first level is a flashback to 5 years prior. You're playing as Bishop, but in command of the protagonist of the first game, Logan, and the revealed turncoat Gabriel, and it's a setup to emphasize the loose cannon nature of Gabriel and how much of a victimized git he really is, foreshadowing his eventual team up with Irina, the first game's antagonist. It's after this that Vegas 2 continues the excellent sidestepping of its title, thrusting you into volatile situations, spilling over in unique locations around the city. You fight through old Vegas, including a nightclub and a classic parking garage, then to an attack at a recreational facility featuring a rock climbing room and, bad times at a sports arena. Then another highlight as you get to fight in the Neon Sign Graveyard, as well as an esports convention, replete with MLG and energy drink sponsorship. There are actually more than a couple licensed brand deals that pop up and help make this rendition of Las Vegas feel true to its consumerist life, like the proliferation of Dodge Ram trucks. It's kind of absurd to think about these activations in a logical sense as it pertains to our world, but as an artistic choice, it's pretty cool. If by this point you're criticizing the game for not featuring any casino levels, well, you get one, and maybe when these games were new, you had more of an appetite after waiting a year and a half for the sequel to come out, but playing the games back to back makes the design choices really stand out as good decisions. I cannot applaud enough how nuanced these missions feel just as a representation of Las Vegas, the city, not necessarily Las Vegas, the gambling town. Vegas is a dense intersection of many different kinds of entertainment, and it's nice to see that recognized in a title whose primary goal is to lay it all under bloody siege. The Rainbow Six games were always varied in the kinds of levels the missions played out on, so it's nice to see Ubisoft continue that tradition, even if some of the levels are so real they're boring by gaming standards. It's best to experience Rainbow Six Vegas as one supersized duology. It's an action-packed journey that shows tactical shooters can also be inherently exciting and dynamic. This was truly next gen when it came out. What keeps me coming back is a weighty gunplay that must be controlled, the fluid squad mechanics, Paul Haslinger's anxious and imposing score with level-specific tracks that last over 12 minutes long apiece, the terrorists themselves being a challenge, but also their voice acting that's just right on the money. They taunt you, they lament the deaths of their mates, their death rattles are affecting. They really have a personality in these games that was missing from prior entries in the series, and the feedback you get from eliminating them is always satisfying. The ragdoll physics are exaggerated but befitting of a heavily armored combatant exiting this world and thumping the ground. I also love the varied and lengthy levels, the increased focus on style in its storytelling, the absolute commitment to taking advantage of a major American tourist attraction for nefarious, horrifying, imaginative purposes in true Tom Clancy fashion. I like to think that he approved. Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and 2 are classics.
Carter!